Anita Goa. Today I'm going to share with you my favorite yoga books. It's a question that I get very often, and recently Paula sent me an email, and from that email I compiled a list that I sent back to her because she was in America wanting to buy books there, and if you're ever in America, buy them there because the books are much cheaper than what they are in Europe anyway. So I decided to make a video about this because I figured that others were interested in what kind of books I like and recommend, so here it is. As you can see, I have my books on display, and the reason for that is that almost a year ago, me and my family, we moved from New York to London. In New York, we had a huge 1,800 square foot loft, and I had my own office where I could store all of my books. And when we moved, we found a cute little house, but it is much less space. Luckily, all of these shelves were here, so I really had no other choice than to display them. I had never color coordinated books before, but I had heard about it, so I figured why not give it a try. I started to put them together and was so pleasantly surprised by the colors that came out. I never knew that there were blues and greens and yellows and reds and purples. So I just wonder if that's the kind of colors that are with yoga books and philosophy and fitness books in general. So anyway, I think that's kind of interesting. But I have quite a lot of experience with books, being that I'm so interested in books. It's a little bit of an addiction, and when we moved to London I had to put a stop to it, being that I don't have so much space anymore. But the great thing is that now I've been, going through my books, and I've been paying attention a little bit more to the books that I have. When I started yoga in 1997-98, my first yoga book was Power Yoga by Beryl Bender-Birch. She was my first teacher, and she's the one where I have my yoga certificate from. Power Yoga is basically Ashtanga Yoga. And when she wrote this book, this is a vintage book. This is like one of the first yoga books that came out there. She was meditating, and in her meditation, Power Yoga came up like that Hollywood sign. So she started to refer to Ashtanga Yoga as Power Yoga and call the book Power Yoga, because the publishers didn't think that any copies would be sold being named Ashtanga Yoga. That's how much everything has changed since 1997-98. Interesting, right? As I was going through my journey and I was taking teacher training, then I got the Yoga Sutras, because that was part of the curriculum, as well as Light on Yoga. I got that one by Iyengar. And I still remember the day when I went to the bookstore and I picked up The Tree of Yoga by Iyengar and The Heart of Yoga by Desika Char. The Tree of Yoga is basically about the 8-limb path, which I've covered in 8 videos here on this channel. And when I first started to read this, or in general when I started to practice Ashtanga Yoga, I had no clue about the 8-limb path. Even in teacher training, I had no idea what it was. And I found it really challenging to understand and sort of get a grasp on. This book is great because he ties it to a tree, and you really start to understand it in a little bit better of a way. And I think I probably read this book, I think like 4 times. And the last time that I read it, I found it quite basic actually, but I recognize that that's how much I have changed sort of in my practice and in my knowledge. But definitely as you begin, I personally felt that it was a bit challenging, but that's the great thing about some books, is that you can keep going back to them, and you always learn something new each time that you read about it. The Heart of Yoga is basically what I think of like an overall view of yoga, the asana, but also the other aspects of it, which are the other aspects of the Ashtanga Yoga path. So a lot of philosophy in it as well, and breathing, and just sort of, general thoughts about this. Recently, or maybe a couple of years ago, this became my next favorite book, The Pure Heart of Yoga, and I've referred to this one many, many times, by Robert Butera. And this also is sort of an overall view of yoga. Talks about intention, talks about asana, talks about focus, and gives a lot of different examples. I really, really, really have enjoyed this one tremendously. I am a huge fan of Iyengar, and let me just tell you first that it was Krishnamacharya basically who was the main guru, and Iyengar, as well as Desikachar and Patabi Joyce of Ashtanga Yoga were his students. So Krishnamacharya will often say that when I first started teaching yoga, I had hundreds of students. Towards the end of my career, I had 3. And not bad of the 3 students that were left. Desikachar was his son, and Iyengar and Patabi Joyce were basically, I think, his nephews. So pretty amazing how 3 different styles of yoga came out of one teacher. So that's the difference, between different minds, think differently and interpret this practice in different ways. But BKS Iyengar's Light on Life is really, really, really good. I thoroughly enjoyed this. A lot of philosophy in this one. He's a big asana person and focuses a lot on asana, but he also has wonderful and educational thoughts on the philosophy, on yoga in general. So I highly recommend this one. Gary Kraftso is another student of Desikachar and Krishnamacharya. So this one, Yoga for Transformation, is also another one of those sort of overall books that I highly recommend, that gives you lots of information about breathing, because they're hugely into breathing, which is so important, as well as asana and the other limbs also of the Ashtanga Yoga path. Here's another one. This one would be a little further down the list, but it's such a beautiful book by Iyengar, Yoga Wisdom and Practice. It has a lot of color to it and a lot of quotes, but everything is geared around asana. And I have really enjoyed this. Every now and then I would just, open it up and just feel so inspired by it. Let me put these down. Then if you would like to get just a little bit more into breathing, I really enjoyed Richard Rosen, The Yoga of Breath, which is his first book. And then the second book, Pranayama Beyond the Fundamentals, is also fantastic. So this goes just a little bit more in depth of all of the different breathing practices that we have. And I have another one. Where was the other one? Where did I put the other one? Oh, there it is. Goodness, I forgot to put this one in. But another breathing book that is really, really wonderful is by Donna Farhi, she's a beautiful teacher, The Breathing Book. And this one, just like Richard Rosen's books talk about all of the different breathing techniques and how to do it and what to look for and so on and so forth. But she has a little bit of a different language and way of explaining things than Richard does, but all of these are fantastic. I do think that if you're on this path, and of course if you're serious about this path, then I think it's very important to read the Yoga Sutras and become knowledgeable, or get a sense at least of what the 8-limb path is. So if you wanna, first start off with the Tree of Yoga, do that. And then you can go into the Yoga Sutra itself and read it. You know, it's not a book that you read cover to cover. You just read it, you know, leisurely here and there, and over time you sort of grasp the information. But this is one that I recommend. This was the first one that I got, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali by Sri Swami Satchidananda, as well as BKS Iyengar's Light on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And this one is for women in particular, by Nishala Joy Devi. So I think that they're all pretty easy sort of to understand and written in an understandable way. And then if you're getting a little bit deeper into your practice and maybe you want to start to look at the yoga poses a little bit more and get maybe a little bit into yoga anatomy and know the muscles and how they move, then Yoga Anatomy by Leslie Kamenov I think is essential to have in your library. He is a fantastic teacher, and if you ever have an opportunity to take a class with him, he travels all over, but he's located in New York City. Grab it, because you'll learn a lot about breathing and anatomy and asana, and he's just a really, really funny guy actually. Then the last books that I have are really specifically for Ashtanga Yoga. I mentioned Para Yoga by Beryl Bender. She also has Beyond Para Yoga, which came after this one. Beryl loves to tell stories, and sometimes she really tells long stories and it takes a little bit of time for her to sort of get to the point, but I always treasure that by her and love that by Beryl. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I highly recommend that you check out that book anyway. Another Ashtanga book which is great and is maybe a little bit more to the point is by John Scott, which is called Ashtanga Yoga. And then these are amazing, Ashtanga Yoga Practice and Philosophy by Gregor Mail. And this one is really good, and at the end of it he goes through the Yoga Sutras actually. So it's a pretty in-depth book about asana and exactly how to do the poses, and I really love this. And this one is of the second series. So the first one is the primary series, and this one is the intermediate or the second series, which deals a lot with the back bends. Then, of course, if you're on the Ashtanga Yoga path, I think it's so fun to read Guruji, which is stories of Ashtanga Yoga teachers that have practiced and studied with Pattabhi Jois, and it is really a lovely book. I highly recommend it. Alright, so that was basically the books that I recommend. I'm going to write all of this in a blog post so you can read about them a little bit more and check them out and see what you fancy. I hope that this was helpful. Please let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this. Give it a thumbs up. And next I'm going to do one for teachers. So if you're interested in maybe becoming a teacher, or maybe you are a teacher and you're looking for some new books or new inspiration, I will share with you what my favorite teaching books are. Alright guys, I love you. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.